in terms of monetary policy, inflation, the trajectory, yes, you're absolutely right. Inflation has moderated and has more or less reacted to our policy toolkit, which central of which is orthodox monetary policy. Okay, and I sometimes I'm challenged when I say that the only monetary policy is orthodox monetary policy. And
so by this you mean interest rate mainly as a tool?
Yep, because truth of the matter is that we came into a situation where they had gone out of orthodoxy, okay, and that in itself created an enormous amount of challenge, extreme liquidity overhang, and funding not going into the right sectors and all that. So we decided the best thing to do is stay the orthodox monetary policy tool, and we did that. And happily, it is, the situation has definitely responded, and inflation is gradually beginning to ease. As at the last MPC, we observed that inflation had come down to about 20% from 21 before, and about 37 at the beginning of the year. So it's gone quite a journey. Now, in terms of the outlook, to be honest, I think we have no choice but to simply continue with the tools that we're applying and to ensure that we are able to bring down inflation. Our goal, of course, is single-digit inflation in the medium term. In the medium term.
There's always a question of definition of a medium term.
Yes, and I will leave that to you to define. Leave that to you to define.
That's a prudent response.
Yes, because we don't have too much time. We can spend the next day trying to define that. So, and we believe that, going into the, for example, now I say we are 20, the World Bank recently, and that is their own projection, they recently figured that by 2027 we should be at 15. That's their projection. So I'm just being very open and transparent about that. But to answer your question, we're headed in a direction where we will ensure that inflation is tackled with all the policies at our disposal. At the same time, we recognize that there's trade-offs, and we also recognize that there's need to have growth. Okay, we recognize that. And we are very pleased that we're beginning to see signs of growth. I mean, the last quarter, again, second quarter of the year, growth went up to over 4%, which is the first time we've had that level of growth that exceeds population growth. Okay, so that's a good sign. And these are early times for measuring these indices, given the tightening phase that we have been in. So we're pretty optimistic that going forward, we've done pretty much many of the more difficult reforms, and that the stage is set for an accelerated growth trajectory. The stage is set. Stability has come in place. Inflation is trending down. Growth is looking good, going up. Trade surplus, positive. So we're very, very positive about the future.
Very good. So if we just come back 1 second to the question of reforms. So we know there has been some fiscal reforms, and so some of that is out of the way. There's also the foreign exchange market liquidity, which is also very important.
Yes.
And I maybe you want to add a little bit on that,
yes,
because I think it's a key element.
It is.
And then, of course, one could also think financial reform.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit more about this type of reforms also that may be underway, and how or if they interact with monetary policy, or if they are kind of independent in a way.
Yes. FX, thank you for bringing that up, is key. And why is it key? Because in Nigeria, the transmission to monetary policy is so swift. Unfortunately, obviously, we have a situation where we are more or less dependent on foreign exchange. Okay, a lot of dependency on foreign exchange. Now, what has happened in the past couple of years, which is very, very important for anybody that is looking at Nigeria to understand, is that there has been a fundamental shift in the whole way foreign exchange is looked at and is managed. When we came in, we had a situation where, which is well known, quite frankly, where foreign exchange was a major challenge. People couldn't get hold of foreign exchange. There was a huge backlog of unpaid debts of about $7 billion. And daily requests could not be met. So it was a real crisis. And of course, the value of the currency was diminishing rapidly. And there was a lot of loss of confidence in the Naira. And that was also not made it wasn't helped by the fact that Nigeria maintained multiple foreign exchange windows. And the gap between the official exchange rate and the other exchange and the multiple exchange rates and the black market rate was just so significant that all you really needed to do was get an allocation of foreign exchange at the official rate, and that was it. So what we did is we carried out a number of certain reforms that helped to deepen the market, close those gaps, and increase liquidity significantly within the foreign exchange market. It was tough because what happened was that there was a massive devaluation, which in itself affected prices. Inflation went up big time. And it was a very, very difficult period, quite frankly. The response to that was that as the market began to understand that we were moving in a free market determined basis, willing buyer, willing seller, and we were going with the market as opposed to a situation where we're trying to fix or hold down the rate, the market responded accordingly. Now, that included some of the more transparent, because this is very important for markets, as you all know. The transparency of the market is very key. We embarked on using certain mechanisms that ensured that those who were trading in the market could see who was buying and who was selling, could come in and go out at ease, and it was not a problem, really. So when that started to happen, transparency started to come into that market, the flows started to come in, and the response was that the gap that I spoke about was closed, and some of that was highlighted by the earlier presentation, was closed. I think at one time the gap was as wide as maybe about 50, 60, 70%, and now it's down to barely 1 or 2%. So no incentive to look for funny ways of buying your foreign exchange. No need to do that. Okay. However, as I said, the rate had to find its own level, so it devalued, and now it's gradually finding a place where it's comfortable, which is fine, because that's really what we want. And with that also, we've been able to grow our reserves. Liquidity is more prevalent in the market. Buyers can come in. They've tested it a number of times. Those who are a bit skeptical, they've come in. They've been able to buy. They've been able to sell. They've seen foreign portfolio investors are a lot more comfortable now. They can see that the market does work, and it responds to willing buyer and willing seller, which is exactly what we want. And that brings about predictability okay, even with respect to prices and what you ask about with respect to the monetary policy. It helps to anchor expectations, which in turn obviously affects inflation in one form or the other. So that has been relatively positive for us, and I think that has contributed in no small way to the gradual easing of inflation. It has definitely contributed in no small way to that. So we believe those particular reforms have been relatively successful. Now, even down to the retail side of things, because we shouldn't forget that ultimately all these reforms that we do, if it doesn't impact the man on the street, ultimately, then you really have to ask yourself, what are you doing?